Speaking to this.
Hello, good evening everybody. There are a few people here and the others are online. Hi, great for having you here. On behalf of Developers.nl, I must say welcome. Tonight Marc is going to tell us everything about the importance of code quality. And at the end of the TechNight we will reveal the topic for next month. So please stay. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. As just introduced, our topic of tonight will be code quality, and the subtext will be lifting your code to the next level. As told, I'm Marc. Hi. I'm 34. I work here for some reason. And I've worked at various places, and I have these weird hobbies called gaming, reading, and sword fighting. They have nothing to do with this topic whatsoever, so we'll skip them quickly. The important question, of course, then is what is code quality? To answer that, we actually have to go one level higher and ask ourselves, what is software quality? Well, thankfully, they codified that. There's an ISO standard for this. You can look it up. You can read a lot about it. But for code quality, we actually only have to go to one of these pillars, and that is maintainability. As it read, code should be modular, reusable, analyzable, or readable, whatever you prefer. It should be you should be able to change things, and you should be able to test it. So, there are a lot of different standards for what good quality code is. There are a lot of companies that will sell you very expensive services to tell you how good quality your code is. There are nice metrics for this, and to simplify it all, I've just divided it into a few levels with easy to understand principles. The first level is level 0. Your code is working. You can build it, you can run it, and maybe a few bugs, but it mostly does what it does. If you're not at least this level, you're at -1, your code is just broken, and I don't care how readable your code is, it doesn't work. One level up from this is that your code is tested. This means you have unit and integration tests that cover most of your code. Again, there's a lot of articles that discussing if this should be 70%, 80%. Everybody who says 100% should really try and write in a lot of getter and setter checkers. And the important part of this is that when build fails, and your build will fail if your test doesn't pass. So, oh no, this test doesn't pass, but I'm still going to production is not a valid decision. This is not so much a code thing or a building street thing, but a team agreement. The same thing your team should agree at this point is for having to have a consistent code style. Most IDEs just have a button so you can enter it, but nothing syncs a review process as 200 changes of where a little accolade is setting every time, every file. So that stops it from being readable. So have one code style, enforce it. If you don't conform to the code style, you shouldn't merge this code into your main branch or master branch or whatever way you keep track of what is the actual working code right now. The next step up is that your checks and sanity checks are done first. I've seen too many cases of a piece of code that did 3 database calls and 5 web service calls, and then checked if one of the input variables was null. Oh, and if it's null, we return the service. And they were wondering why this thing that was used every time had performance issues. If you are doing this, the trick is to have your shortest path to go first, and use nice things like returns, continues, and breaks to stop when you're done. Don't have an if, an else, and then an if, and else, and if, and else. So you have a nice if tree until infinity. It makes it unreadable. You don't know what conditions are true at any given point. Just use the control flow abilities you have. For languages that don't use hard typing, this is also the point where you check your types. Because again, if you come across like halfway through the function that what you thought was a string is an integer, Yeah, at this point, it's far too late. You shouldn't have done anything else either. One step up from this is that we start using consistent naming. All our functions are named what they do. You don't have a full function anywhere in your code, especially that does 90% of your work. I also dislike things called update, mostly because what is it updating at this point? It shouldn't only apply to functions, it should apply to parameters, it should apply to variables, it should apply to classes. Tell me what it does, otherwise if I have to read over it in a code review, I still don't know what you're doing. Also, please be consistent. If you have update quality everywhere and then you suddenly have quality update, you're probably not applying this consistently. One step up from this again, or one level up, is code grouping. If you have a code function of 800 lines, you shouldn't, but we'll get to that later. If I get a database call and I get a return value and I do first 3 other calls and then I'm going to just do something with the database, put it together so I know what you're doing. I can read this little section of code and know what you're talking about. If I have to, scan through all the code after 5 function changes, nobody knows where stuff is anymore and inconsistent changes happen. If you can, and your code style allows it, I advise to use white spaces like line breaks, so you can demarcate each group, which makes everything a lot more readable. The next step up from this is single purpose methods. If you have long methods, they usually do multiple things. If you have applied nice and consistent naming and you have a lot of ands and or in your methods names, you're probably doing too much in one method. If you have these nice code groups you just made, each group can probably be a method. If you do the same thing in 500 places, this should be one method and just called everywhere. This is also the place where you usually remove most of your duplication. And indeed, not to split your groups. And if the name still contains an and or, really decide if that should be done or that it should be 2 methods. The next step here is consistent interfaces and signatures. This applies both on the high level, so make sure you consistently apply interfaces like the REST standard to your code, but also if you have similar methods that they use the same order of parameters. So if you keep putting your user first, then do that everywhere and don't, switch positions, especially if you have overloaded names, because then people just don't know what fields are anymore. Our last basic level for today is object extraction. This is the point where you look at your code and see if you have groups of recurring parameters. For ints might be a line or something. Then make a line class. And you now know what you're doing with those 4 parameters, and you can put code that belongs to that line only in the line. You'll quickly notice that these are often things that are also in your domain model and things like that. What you also can do is if you have an item, for instance, or a book, and you always have to have an exception for a certain kind of book. For instance, if the name starts with Harry Potter, you do something special, then you probably just want to make a sub-object of this or subclass, because apparently this behavior is different every time, and instead of having to check every time, you can do this with overloaded methods. There is actually a beyond this, 8 and plus, but at this point, 90% of the time, this is very much dependent on which language you're using, what version of the language you're using, whichever frameworks you're applying. So at this point, it splits up in all different options. And it just doesn't become feasible to do it in this general presentation. There are probably very nice framework and language-specific classes over how you nicely write this. a nice example for Java is that you replace very complex loops with streams, for instance. So now we come with our first question of the day. At what level is your code? And after I've gotten general consensus here, or at least an answer from a lot of people, I will start doing the live coding because it's a lot more fun than me talking. And remember, you're at your lowest level. So if you have 1% of your code that is a 7 and everything else is a 5, be honest. No, every level is at least present and accounted for. I like that some people are actually honest enough that they say their code is broken. Let's see, I have 25 entries. I'll give it a half a minute more. See if we get some more. I think this is it. So a quick look. Half of you isn't above code grouping. More than half of you is not above code grouping. Yeah, I have come across in the last few years projects ranging from 0 to 7 where I started. I always hope I leave it slightly higher than I find it. But I'm honest, sometimes even that's not possible. We will, as I said, I will now go to the live coding part. The question after that, I will actually still discuss a little bit of how you can get your management to agree to actually work on this. I'm using example, the Gilded Rose. It's a refactoring kata. You can find this online. The link will be at the end of the presentation. It's in Java, or my version is in Java. That's because that's my language I have the most experience with. It is in actually, I think, in at least 20 or 30 different languages. So if you want to try this in your own language, be my guest. So this is the code we've gotten. As you can see, it's very beautiful. We also got a list of what it should be doing. We'll ignore that for mostly because we just want to make this code better. The point where you use that is to make your test, but because that's a lot of time and I have an hour or less, I went ahead and made them beforehand. This is Cucumber for everybody who doesn't know that. Again, link will be at the end. Just say these are the scenarios that are described, and I can run these, and at the moment, all my tests work. So my software does what it's supposed to do. So at this point, I'm technically at level 1. I will also, for the ones who like it, show me the steps. Again, it's not much. We'll get back to this later. So I'm now at level 1. I have a consistent style because I'm working in my own. And I have my standard style sheets on, and I have tests. The next thing will be primary checks. The thing we notice, or if you had slightly more time to read and not just listening to my voice, is that everything has exceptions for Sulfurus, the hand of Ragnaros. Someone didn't want to rip off the Viking traditions too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab one of these and put a check at the start of this for loop that if an item is that, you're basically done. So that, I can now take every references to this out. because I have checked all these cases even before going in. I will also auto apply my style sheet again. And my tests say it still works. Or it should, and otherwise I have done something wrong. No, still works, good. At this point I will also cheat and do look at my IDE and see what they suggest. I have some suggestions, like making it slightly more, to make it slightly more readable. And again, same here. So, I like to get all my warnings out of the way quickly. The next step is consistent naming. The one important part of that is that this function does more than just update quality. For one, it also apparently updates the cell in date. So I am going to ask you guys next question. What should be a good name for this? I'll give you a few minutes. Oh yes, I have to have my phone for this. Yes, I am going to do something sensible. I like the fact that I'm getting all the reasons why you shouldn't name it. Bad example surfing. Give 30 seconds more. I see at least 2 good suggestions. So we've got some suggestions. The top 3. Yeah, but for whoever gave the 9th example, I like your suggestion, but you're running ahead a bit. We're at 3, not at 5. And yes, if you do this on your own, you are perfectly valid to do that. But I have to go through every step, so you know what you have to do every step. The top 3 and the bar are all things I really do not like because, of course, I don't like them. I think I will go with update inventory. That's actually a pretty good description. So we have now a function called update inventory, or we will as soon as there's this. Yeah. So whoever said update quality and sell in would also be a correct one, though technically it does slightly even more than that. But we now have consistent names. The other consistent naming thing I'm going to do is remove all the constants because we're using them everywhere and it's a bit awkward if those change somewhere and I have to change it in 5 spots. And I'm using all the nice... That was stupid of me. I apologize. I was going to say I'm using all the key marks from the IDE just to make my life easier, and I just did something stupid again. What did I do stupid? I forgot to mark do all. Waarom wil die nu opeens niet meer? You should always see that he stops working the moment you try to explain something. Okay. Okay. I have now consistently named everything. This is convenient. We will start grouping code. In general, this code is actually nicely grouped. The only thing I'm going to change here is move this function up here. And that's because if it's smaller than 11 or smaller than 6, it's also smaller than 11. And for later stages, this will actually be very convenient. Yes, I know what I'm going to do next. I'm cheating, I know. Now we have grouped, we can start making single purpose methods. The first method I'm going to extract is this little piece of code. And this is update quality. Yes, I know, long name, but exactly describes what it does. This is all the updates to the code I do when my cell in is under 0. See the. I could also include the top if, but then it would actually technically do two things. It's checking if the cell is under 0 and then do something. And to save myself the effort, I will just extract this. I will also extract this piece of code. Update. Daily quality update. This we do every day, apparently. Now, my main function is now fairly readable. If it suffers, I don't do anything. I do my daily quality update. My selling goes down 1. And if that's under 0, we do the update quality when selling is under 0. At this point, my eye falls on this function and I go, hey, I think I can make this even simpler again. And I can say, well, if I do have in H3, it does this thing. So I will flip this if, insert this piece of code here. And when I'm done here, return. And I can remove this. Here I have need a separate cases again. I will do the same thing though, because I will want the shortest path first. This goes up again and return. And I'm almost forgetting to move this. And I forgot that somewhere else as well, apparently. Right, so important check, is everything still working? Good, everything is still working. The next step is looking for, or still part of this step technically, is looking for code duplication. As you notice, we have this check every time we update quality. Apparently, there is a limit to what quality may be. So I want to make this one place to check it, but this is a domain constraint. So I'm actually going to just put it into our item, and I need to make this readable. So, hi. This means we can't just write in quality anymore. Everybody who writes Java longer says you should never do that, but again, I'm trying to just go through the steps and not nitpick too much, otherwise we'll be here still tomorrow. I will need a getter and a setter if I have a private value, and I can auto-generate those. But I want my checks here. So if I set this value and it needs to be either 50 or it should be between 50 and 0. And I now have this checked. And I'm missing an accolade. Yeah. This should also be true when I create this thing. So we are changing this to set quality because I have the test. Don't want to duplicate this check. I have this here now. And to make my life slightly easier, I will now write 2 extra help functions. Because I'm doing 2 things every time, it's increasing it, and that is and decrease. Who does weirdly enough exactly the opposite. Okay, now I have to apply that here. I see all these nice red places where I know this is wrong. This thing says is -1, so we have an item print decrease. I have a check here for this one, so this is an item increase quality. I need to lose one here. Another item plus increase. Another item plus increase. Item plus increase quality. Here we have a set quality to 0. And the last but not least is an item. Okay, do my test still work? I should hope not. Yeah, I of course need to change my test code in this case, because they were also accessing everything sneakily. Now, let's try this again. Does this work? I made a mistake somewhere. Expected 18. So I get this nice text. The hot dog should have quality. I made a mistake. This should be a decrease. I can even check the original code if I want to, but not makes it. By now, it doesn't really help anymore. I should have committed like 5 times, but again, time. This should now give the correct answer. I hope yes. Otherwise, I'd have to do a lot of debugging live. That's fun. So at this point, I will say I've got everything in single purpose functions. I've got my code duplication removed at this point. And I can switch over to the consistency in signature and interface. Well, everything is just using items. So I would actually say this doesn't have any complicated enough interface to require a change. I would say that I'm technically, so let me put it straight. Next step is 7, object extraction. And in this simple case, I would not start this. This case is too small to warrant the extra effort. But you know, what fun is it if you're not going overboard on small examples? So the object extraction, the first thing is that it's already items. So that really means I shouldn't have to do too much object extraction. But what I will do is I will actually apply I have items with all kinds of corner cases. So we're going to make some subtypes today. And yes, as I said, this is going to be going overboard on the quality, but yeah, it's fun. So item will be abstract. That means I can't initiate it anymore. Then I need a public, well, we can use the names we had from an earlier test. Void update item. What does it need to do? Well, basically it needs to do these steps. Wrong button, if I wanted to copy that. That does mean I, will actually need to have this function. Let me make this thing actually understand what I want, because I don't have the items, of course, anymore. I want this to be an abstract method because every item will have different rules here. And no. And I want this abstract method. Oh, that's good. And that means this becomes basic. Here we can change this code to basically for each item, update item. And because I'm going to want to steal a lot of this code, because why rewrite what you already have, I am going to just put this in comments for a moment. And so I have items, so I need to the cases. So the most basic case is our default item. Yes, I know, inspiring names. Which will need to extend item to work. Yeah. So I want the two abstract methods implemented, and I need a constructor. I write what I can get generated. So we can look at our code in our daily quality update. If it's not something else, we need to decrease the value. So default item. Oh. The only thing you need to do here is decrease quality. In the other one, also decrease. Oh, I get the, go away. I get this nice pop-up that I have so many participants, and that's right over the place where I want to click. Very convenient. And we want to decrease it here. So we have our default items. So that is taken care of. Our other cases are, we have a pre-item. You notice I'll keep adding item everywhere because I want to make sure everybody knows it's still an extended of item, even if I just read over it. Now, same thing applies. I want those two methods because we do something there. And I want to create a constructor. I am going to save myself some spelling errors in the future. I am going to steal this from here and put it here and rename it to name, and I will show you why later, and then make it easier to construct a pre-item. Right, so I can go back to my code and I can cheat and I can look at. So the only thing I do if I have an pre-item, no, of course it does. I have the same problem and I'm going to get annoyed by it today. I will increase it and I will do the same check down here. If it's a brie, I also increase it. So I want to increase it and make sure it follows my style guide. Good. Next item up on the list is a backstage pass. Backstage item, in other words. Yeah, this is repetitive, I know. I have to get through them. Yeah. I can do the same steal again, because I need this one this time. And I want my backstage item. And this can be called name again. So name, and we don't need this. Now we know from the example that this increases, and not just increases once, but depending on how close it is, this was this nice if tree here. We do some more, and I'm going to copy paste it again, because I hate writing code incorrectly if I already have it somewhere. And this was the case where we said, if it was passed at sell by date, yeah, your concert tickets aren't worth anything anymore. Then we had one last item. And that was a suffrage item. This is this very special case of today. Because this one actually just doesn't do anything at all. Let me first finish these. So I'm actually going to have to override the public, what did I call it again? Update item. And just do nothing there. The other two I have to bake because it's an over everything case of, and I can steal this again to fix the name. So we are consistent everywhere. Now, I will award no points for going to say that I still have to change all my test cases again. But first I can actually go, I've taken, copied this code. So this can go, and these two functions, whoa, I need that accolade. So, well, this is now what my main function does. It updates my items, which is nice and convenient. We see all the codes, and I now will have to change my tests again because I can't initiate item anymore. What I will need to do is create item function, and for everybody who has seen these before, I'm going to have to make a factory. And you probably will have to do this if you do this. Yeah, that was a broken sentence. If you, when you going to do all these subtypes, you probably will have to build a factory somewhere. I'm going to make it myself very easy by just putting in a switch, which I admit is slightly cheating, but it makes it for this case, this small use case, very easy. I have to switch on the name because that will tell me what an item is. So now I can cheat some more and just say, well, I have a Brie item. I have that name in a public constant. This is why I kept it public. Yes, I know. And I just want to return a new Brie item here with the cell in the quality. And as I said, you see that every constructor uses the same order, mostly because I generated them from the same base, but we have the suffers item. We can use, and then and the last but not least today is the backstage item. And as you see, this is also why I changed all the things to name. I have indeed made something consistent over all the cases. So every time I need a name, I can use this, blah. And then my mind did, oh, you want to type the same thing you typed every time. Okay, I have made this, now my test should run. And now we see if this all works. And if not, I made a mistake. No, it all works. Woo! I don't have to go back and debug everything. This is, oh, and I can now remove these because they don't apply here. I made a nice object-oriented piece of code now. The gilded rows does an update of the inventory and tells every item just to update. It doesn't care what the item is. It doesn't need to know. I can have in my backend like 500 different types of items. My inventory system doesn't know, and the various items take care of it themselves. Presentation, please. Right, this was the question we just asked. Let's not ask it again. That was the live coding part. For everybody who then went, okay, I now know everything, I can go do it yourself, by all means. I'm now going to talk a little bit about how to do quality in an organization. But first, I have another question for you. Most of you can drink. So, do you get enough support to do maintenance in your team? Yes, no. From your management and everything? Yeah. Oh, wow. Somehow I expected this to be far more slighted to the no, but that's mostly how I know most developers experience this. Okay, be truthful. Are you guys now just saying yes or no just to get this evened out? Well, okay, about 50-50. For all the yeses, you might learn something. For all the no's, listen very carefully. So the first question you should ask yourself at all times is, when should I actually work on code quality? I have a very good answer for that. Yes. You should always be thinking about your code quality when you're writing code, but also when you get asked, should we implement this? The answer can really be no, because that would break everything we have. Maybe later when we have made our code slightly better. A good way to work on your code quality at any given time is clean up your commit before committing. So make sure your style is applied, make sure your tests run, make sure that you have removed any unnecessary warnings you can easily fix. A good rule I use here is called the Boy Scout or Girl Scout rule. And that is simply leave the place better than you found it. When I do commits in old code bases from other projects I work on, when I change something in a class, I'll just go through the class quickly and see if I can clean some stuff up. It doesn't have to be big. It could be just, inverting a few ifs or putting access to some stuff away or replacing old for loops with streams or something. Just make it slightly better. But make sure that you have this tested, or I will just, I can now write the test for the little function I changed, but I'll write the test for the rest of the class. It's, half an hour more work, but it'll help greatly over time. Another good way to work consistently on code quality, especially if you have a low-level system, is to just go with your team and discuss it. A time of the week where you work on this. I've worked somewhere where we had every Tuesday afternoon, after lunch, we went all sit down and pick something of our maintenance backlog. I spent a few weeks in a row just getting through 1,000 warnings. You're saying, oh my God, 1,000 warnings? Yes, that was my opinion. Because at that point, if you get a warning somewhere, you don't care anymore. But if you're reduced to like 5, oh, I got an extra warning, I'm doing something wrong. This is the whole, too many is just a statistics and you don't care. So, The next very important question, how do I convince my manager? My first suggestion is find a good metaphor. Martin Fowler actually wrote a nice paper on this with a link here, and it will follow later. Why high quality software is actually worth it. My personal favorite metaphor just compares technical debt, as it's called, to actual debt. So if you say, well, to do this correctly and write nice code, I need an hour. But your manager says, but you have half an hour. You can write in half an hour, but that other half an hour, you need to take a loan out on something you need to work later on. But every time you then touch that code and don't take that half hour to clean that code up, you need to do some extra work to get it nice. That's, the interest on that loan you took. And that interest has to be paid every time until you pay off the loan. And eventually that will just add up and add up like every loan. And you have spent far more time than it would have taken the first time to clean it up to get to work around your full loan. This is technically not the only way you can get technical debt. You can actually get that from just over time because new updates and stuff. If they ask about that, just say it's taxes. They'll get it. If this all fails, or they won't listen, or whatever, my next advice is just don't tell them. Be slightly nice, but just go in yours. When you poker your stories, just give it some extra points. Oh, normally I would say 5, I'll say 6 points or 6 hours, and I have an hour extra to do some code quality work. I mean, they're expecting you to know how much time it will take, so you're just taking out those interest payments for him without having to tell him. It's called initiative, right? That was actually my presentation. If you have any questions, and to prevent everybody shouting, you can now add them to me, and I'll see how quickly I can answer all of them. Yeah, now I have to wait. If there's someone here in the room, they can just also tell me. That's maybe quicker. But why didn't I use an interface in your code example? I didn't use, for the item, I didn't use an interface because I wanted to, over all the subclasses, use the same code. And I didn't put an interface over the gilded rows because I have one implementation. As soon as I have multiple implementations, it would be worth to add interfaces. But until the time, it will just be extra clutter around my classes. I should be able to see more. And create method will return domain model user. I think that at this point create is explicit, but you can have long arguments about this. I admit. Indeed, in user repository create would be this standard thing. Though at this point, is my asking is insert not a better name or save, and you can have nice discussions, especially when, for instance, you work with something like Spring, where half of this is given to you, then just use this, be consistent within the class. So if you use the same name everywhere, keep using it. Code formatting and style. As I said, most IDEs actually support automatic styling. I can see if I can quickly. For instance, here, no, wrong one. Wrong one. For instance, in my IntelliJ here, I can just go to the editor, code style, and Java, and I can have all these nice options I can click, and I can fill in values or order stuff, and you can usually save these to your to a file, and you can then export those to the rest of your team, put it on the shared drive or something, and then everybody who starts sets up their work laptop, just gets that file and say, apply this, don't think about it. And if you really have opinions on it, please we'll do it during the retro or whatever method you have for discussion. The other good advice here is you can actually in most, I know you can do it in Git. I'm not sure about all the code sources. If you can apply this in hooks and you say, oh, it doesn't apply, so we're not accepting it. As I said, I use IntelliJ, I just do Ctrl-Alt-L, and every language tools probably has their own method. Well, this is an actual good question. As I said, you could have put the if in there, and then you would actually apply it better. I think I should probably have done that in this case. Or you can, so indeed, if this would have been the case that I probably should just put the if in there as a precondition with a return and say if it's not below 0, throw it out. It's, I probably was too quick about this. So nice call, thank you. No, actually not. The reason I did this presentation was we had a presentation, I went through a presentation of like about code quality a year and a half ago, I think by now. And that guy was rambling about all the nice theoreticals behind code quality, and I got bored within 5 minutes and said I can do better, and my boss said yes, please. Since then, I've read a little bit about Uncle Bob, and indeed from Martin Fowler and everywhere, because I read stuff, and I can show you because these are, you know, my sources and stuff. So I made my example available in GitHub. The original with all the different languages is also available. Martin Fowler's book Refactoring is great on this subject, of course. I read Joost Visser's works. And for those who like Cucumber and use Java, I can advise this book. I think every other language has their own version. I personally advise Cucumber for the testing, especially if you want your product owner and stakeholders to be very involved in writing good quality conditions for what your software has to do. And here again, the paper I mentioned earlier. Do I have now all the questions, or no? I think I would like to thank everybody for their attention, and have a nice day. Oh.
Mark, thank you for your presentation. We have a small gift for you from all the colleagues of Developers.nl. Cool. The next presentation will be Going Component Driven by Gerrit Hengeveld on the 23rd of September. It's going to be online due to COVID, but we really hope to see you there. So a big applause for Mark. Yay!